But you're definitely interacting with it. You are, or having conversations with AI chatbots and those types of things when you interact with it. So it is here today. It's in your world. And let's see. Let's keep going. So you asked me what is AI or what does AI mean? So this is how we define it. When we talk about AI, we talk about applied intelligence. It is a combination of artificial intelligence, automation, and analytics. And we really see that coming to life in 4 themes, and we'll dive into each of them. Living processes, right? And we'll talk about what those mean. Responsible AI, data native, and then the last one, and probably what's most important for this group, is a concept we call human plus machine, which is, we don't see AI operating on its own, right? It's all about how do I take some of this automation, how do I take some of these living processes, how do I extend a human's natural capabilities, such that I can deliver a better solution for my customers. We see it in a whole host of areas, right? Whether it be technology and information, right? Better finance decisions, engineering, sales and marketing, all sorts of areas that we see it involved in. And what really drives, right? Why are people going for this applied intelligence? What makes this important? As a business person and as many of the other panelists here, being in business, right, there needs to be an outcome. There has to be a reason why we're applying AI, right? And these are the big ones we see, right? We're able to lower costs, right? I can have things done cheaper and faster for me, right? New speed to market, so I can roll out products. I can deliver differentiated features that my competitors maybe can't without the AI. A concept called hyper-personalization, and this is as I interact with different service providers, different companies, right? I expect what they're offering me to be very tailored towards me. I'm sure people are well aware of Amazon's recommendation engine, right? What you see on Amazon is not what I see. And that's getting into that personalization, but really this is a concept of how do I take it a step further than that? How do I get to a hyper-personalization? New revenue streams, so through AI, right? Am I able to sort of open up revenue streams that I couldn't before? And then reimagining products and services. And obviously with State Auto Online here, I know there's a lot of work around sort of self-driving cars and how does that impact insurance and those types of things. So definitely, I'm sure they'll have a lot to say there, right? But also with the Nationwide in town, right? How are they being impacted around homeowners insurance? Can they use AI to adjust claims and adjudicate claims faster, right? JP Morgan Chase is also in town. We do a lot of work with them. How can they deliver a personalized banking service to you such that you stay engaged, right? That they can fend off what we would call the digital native people, right? So if people are familiar with Marcus savings account, which are all digital accounts, right? How can JP Morgan Chase, with their sort of branch of networks, provide a differentiated offering and that hyper personalization for their retailer, in their retail branches specific for you? So hopefully I'm not stealing anyone's thunder here, but we'll quickly talk through it. And when we talk about AI or applied intelligence for us, it's much more than just, as I mentioned, it's a lot bigger than artificial intelligence. And so what we'll really talk about is a constellation of technology. So here we're talking about machine learning, right? Whether we're doing deep learning or shallow learning, right? Supervised and unsupervised, all those types of things. The next sort of ring we put around it really is the capabilities that are enabled by AI, right? So I can do some computer vision, I can do natural language processing, speech to text, these types of things. And then the last part we see here is, and I'll click it here, is this purple ring that sits around it. And it's a bit hard to see here, but it's really how do I take, the type of AI I have and the applications, and what can that really give me in terms of, how do I apply this to your world? So whether it be through extended reality, if people remember Go-Go Glasses not too long ago, it was a good try. Still a lot of work to do there, right? But text and speech and image and video analytics, right? So I mentioned some of the insurance companies we're working with. I think they're pushing forward around how do I get less interaction, or how can I do more automated recognition and adjudicate claims. Recommendation systems, obviously, a lot of these, we've been involved in chatbots for many years now, and really there's a question around how do I make my chatbot better, right? One of the big complaints we hear from customers when we're trying to implement chatbot is I would rather talk to an agent, even if it takes me longer, than a chatbot that gives me the wrong information, right? So rolling out a chatbot, and if that chatbot provides wrong information or bad information or just no information at all, people get very frustrated by that, and they would rather wait an additional time to talk to somebody who's going to get it right. So it can't be, let's just roll out a chatbot and hope it tells me the right answers. It really needs to be making sure that it is providing the right answers for you. So that's kind of our constellation of what we talk about here. And then really, it'll build out here for a second, but what does this do? What is the life cycle that we see this implied intelligence on it? And we do see it as a life cycle. Amazon, if people are, I assume, familiar with Amazon, they talk about their flywheel of AI or their flywheel of machine learning. It's same sort of concept here, right? But how are we sensing the data, right? Are we doing it through IoT sensors? Are we doing it through devices that people carry around and they're answering surveys, those types of things? As I collect that information, how am I comprehending it, right? And then I'm deciding on what to do, and then I'm acting and then continuing to learn it and sort of have this continual flywheel of the process. So we'll jump to the next one here. So we talked about four kind of key things, right? Is learning processes, and we talked about this earlier, but how do companies follow you? How do they get this hyper realization or hyper personalization for you? And so this is, as I move between sort of interfaces, right? It's very simple for me to go from my computer to my phone, right? Be on the phone and then physically call somebody, right? Or if for JP Morgan Chase, for example, I can then also physically walk into a branch. So pretty quickly, I can move through 3 or 4 sort of interaction points. How do we make those processes learn and understand, when this happens, right, when he's not satisfied with a phone call that occurred, the most likely step is he's going to go to the branch that's on the corner. So we should be prepared, and right, we should schedule some time and be expecting that person to show up. So that's a little bit about the learning processes. The next one is what if machines did more? Oh, it's going to build out here. Sorry, I'm running out of time, so I'm going fast. What if machines did more than just heavy lifting? So this is really what we talked about, that machine plus human. And what we at Accenture see is, AI is not going to take over the world. There are some things that humans are very, very good at and will always be probably better than machines at. And so it's, how do we take what humans are very good at and combine that with what the machines are very good at to produce, outcomes that we don't expect. So how do we combine those two? And we see a lot of potential growth in that area. So in our mind at Accenture, it is not a human versus machine or humans or machines. I have to have one or the other. It's really about humans and machines, and where I automate versus augment my human workers. The next one is sort of digital native, and this is I think we talked about it, and one of the panelists brought it up, is how do we let the data go, or the sort of AI and machine learning direct us where to go, right? We're going to put a lot of data out there, and how do we create these sort of algorithms that figure out what we should be doing? And then the last one, and I think one that a lot of companies are currently wrestling with, is what does responsible AI look like, right? A lot of companies are putting I mentioned chatbots out there. If they provide wrong information, are the companies being held accountable for that? Tesla, as they build their self-driving cars, right, they have a huge dynamic to think about and interact with, is, are they responsible for the decisions that their AI is making? And so this is one we see a lot of people starting to wrestle with and starting to try and tackle, but understanding, what does AI mean for my business, not just from a process automation, but from a sort of global player in the industry. I need to make sure I'm responsible for my AI going forward. And with that, I think I only went a minute over, which is maybe a world record for me. I think we're holding questions to the end. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, actually, students, if you have questions, please just go ahead and jump in there and put it in the chat. We can be able to flex some questions in prior to our discussion time. But Ryan, thank you so much. That really gave us a lot of information about not only how we need to think about how we're using AI and the responsibility of it, but then how it makes our work easier and how we can create systems that that can make processes happen faster. So with that being said, I know Abbas is here from the Columbus Collaboratory, and so if you want to go ahead and jump in and just kind of give some more information about AI, that would be fantastic.
Sure, 1 second. Let me pull up my screen here.
Sure. So while you're pulling, okay, great.
Did you guys, can you guys see this?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Were you going to say something?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, great. So today I'm going to present to you guys kind of AI at Columbus Collaboratory. So before I really tell you about AI in Columbus Collaboratory, I'm just going to tell you about Columbus Collaboratory. So Columbus Collaboratory, sorry guys, I'm going to just make sure that this is off. So at the Collaboratory, we are a company that does AI, cybersecurity, and related technologies. But Columbus Collaboratory has kind of an interesting story. We are a company that was founded by these 7 big companies in Columbus. So AEP, Battelle, Cardinal Health, Huntington, L Brands, and Nationwide, and Ohio Health. They all got together and were like, hey, we have similar problems in the cybersecurity space and all, as well as analytics. Can we create a unified company that would be able to address these problems for the greater, these big companies in the greater Columbus area? So since we moved on from just serving these 7-member companies to other companies, and those encompass several different industries like aviation, healthcare, different technologies, and of course, like as I was talking about, cybersecurity is a big focus for us. And we've also done some stuff with like Pelotonia and Columbus 2020, so some other stakeholders. So AI at the Columbus Collaboratory. So I'm a data scientist there, so I just think about this from a very data perspective. So we kind of have 3 arms that we approach when we think about AI. It's really business process engineering. So that's improving productivity, efficiency, and operational costs, comparing kind of performance versus cost, and being able to actually go into a business, outline their entire process, and then actually put AI at certain critical points so that we can actually improve their process and be able to save time for people to work on other things, or be able to actually just improve their process completely and overhaul it. We also do cybersecurity, so really that we're worried about vulnerabilities and attacks. So we're thinking about hackers getting into networks and doing things like password spray or other types of attack like that, and we're actually building up models that be able to detect when a hacker is doing these types of attacks. So I'm not going to get into too much details about that, but that is one of our use cases. And then it's also user-face automation. So that's actually using kind of different software and actually automating what a user would do and kind of relieve them from doing these kind of tedious tasks that they may need to do throughout the day. Maybe that takes them 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. They do it every single day. User interface automation would allow you to automate those types of tasks. So how do we do AI? So kind of like Ryan, we have a couple plays on AI. We have it in 2 ways. We say algorithmic inference and automated intelligence. So I just threw a bunch of words up here and a bunch of logos, but really we think about the problem. So in AI, we need to spend a lot of time understanding the domain. You can't just be like, oh, here's a data set and do AI. You actually have to have a very specific problem you're looking at and understanding of it and actually expertise on it. And then you're able to make some assumptions and start building models, right? So you need to know the process, and then you're able to frame it mathematically. So we spend a lot of time either doing a lot of math or we're programming. So the two main tools. So I know that they're students. So like for me, if I were to want to become a data scientist, I would really think about obviously upping my math, but as well my programming skills. So our studio. Those are 2 big things, especially for me. And at the Columbus Collaboratory, we're an R shop. and Python. So Python is also heavily used in data science. It's arguably more than R, but R I think is for me. I come from a biostatistics background, and it's heavily used in those kind of fields. And for me, it's totally sufficient and is able to do anything AI oriented. And then I have AWS and Google Cloud up here. So if you needed to, both of these offer AI platforms as well. So if you need to do some model building, you could use some of their products as well. And also you could deploy your AI models onto these cloud services and set up things like your REST API or technologies, Docker. So deep learning, that was mentioned before. So two of the technologies we use for that are TensorFlow and PyTorch. I'm just throwing these out there for you guys to do research on at some other time. But just look into TensorFlow or PyTorch. Again, as I was saying, like if you really want to be a practitioner of algorithmic inference or AI, you need to gain some expertise in mathematics, probability, statistics. And Ryan was just talking about how one big thing is we don't know about consequence of our algorithms, and do we actually analyze that? And that's a big thing at Alat Collaboratory. We really do a lot of diagnostics to make sure that we are actually, considering something that's very interpretable, something that's not so black box, and something that actually is, addressing the problems with things that we can actually determine. I'm not going to get too much into the automated intelligence, but the technology you can get into is like Google Chrome Puppeteer, UiPath. You can also automate a lot of Excel stuff with VBA, and then you can wrap it with Puppeteer or UiPath to automate those types of tasks. So it's just, I'm going to run through like 3 quick little use cases of some projects that I've worked on, specifically me. There's a bunch of other projects I've worked on, but I thought I'd just highlight 3. So one of them was at this hospital network. Basically, the problem here was that they have this patient access services, and they go around on the carts, and they actually are the people who talk to you after you go to the ER. So they wanted us to be able to predict how many patients come into an ER. So we were able to do that just taking their historical data for two years, and then we were able to build a model, a pretty flexible model that was able to determine with a high level of accuracy how many patients would come into an ER a certain day. And we gave different boundaries, and then team was able to create their scheduling based off of that. And we estimated a really large savings from that, and they've got that implemented today. It's very automated. They actually do nothing. Everything's very it's just the scripts out there that pull the data and then push it back out into a user interface for them to consume. We also make a wait time model. So this is also another hospital one. There's no big theme there, but just another one. So this is like on the mobile app. If you look up where an urgent care is, you're able to determine how long the wait will be. So we were able to build that again through a machine learning model, and we were able to predict the wait times. And it turns out that this is quite accurate and seems to improve their business process. And the very last one I'm going to talk about is this. There's a software company here in town that already adopted some AI through Watson. And what they found out was that when they used it for their specific use case, it was just super noisy, and they didn't have a very good way to clean up the noise, and they wanted to reduce it. So they consulted us, and we were able to build them a narrative classifier for some of the documents they were sending through Watson. And we were successful at doing that. We basically used a gradient boosting model, and we were able to pull out the documents that were relevant, and then we deployed it out as an API, and they were basically able to consume that and then able to feed relevant documents through their process. And now their workers are able to actually get insights from this kind of AI process that they wanted to get from Watson. So some last thoughts on it is, I was reading an article the other day from Gartner, and it was saying that 87% of companies want AI, and they want it, and actually 93 of those 87% said that they think if they don't adopt AI in the next 5 years, their company will be seriously behind. So I think it's going to get deployed across all industries. The biggest concern right now is scalability. I think for like deep learning things, you're competing with like Google, Facebook, and they have a wealth of information and data, but you're able to still do these types of analyses. But you're able to do them using small data. You're able to actually come up with a lot of information using less data, and you don't need a plethora of it. You're able to. There are methods out there to get a lot out of less. We need to bridge the gap between research and the real world. So a lot of the things that we hear about are really just at the research level, but we haven't really adopted them in the real world yet. And there are consequences, and some of them might be something like disrupting employment, customers, or other stakeholders. And we need to make sure that we can appropriately manage those types of changes and be able to get the workforce prepared. And companies should probably start piloting some of the AI models that they're deploying so they can help mitigate the change. And that was it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think, yeah, you brought up some really good examples of how AI can be used in different industries, looking at the emergency room, anticipating how many people might be coming through, looking at accurate wait times when you might go someplace, how long that might be. And so I really appreciate you highlighting how this might look different in different industries.
Hey, Julie, can
yes.
I interrupt? We
Please.
have some questions from our students, and they are coming in pretty quickly. So I just wanted to see if we could take a quick question break. Some are directed at specific people, but some could be just general. So if you panelists would like to chime in. But the first question is really regarding what Abbas just finished talking about. One of our students asked how much of the work that you just mentioned has been applied to the current situation management to assist with COVID-19. Do you have any information on that just yet?
So definitely the hospitals are contacting us about the models and in these crises. The wait time model actually has done a good job adjusting for the influx of patients. But obviously in like central Ohio, the ERs aren't as overwhelmed as like places in as New York City. So it has been doing a good job, and same with the patient access model. Like it's doing a good job, but that one really was influenced by a lot of the history. So now that some of the ERs actually have gone down in central Ohio, the prediction has changed. So, it was something that was kind of, highly unpredictable, like this crisis. So I think to actually have something that's more flexible, we'll have to add some more information, but it's not clear what that would be right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next question was, a student asked, how long does it take to develop those models, I think is what we're asking. So you talked about how you took a couple years of data to be able to do that, but how long does it take you to kind of create those models?
So at Columbus Collaboratory, we usually spend about 12 to 14 weeks per project. So the modeling itself, I think actually it turns out to be a small amount of that time, but it is probably about like 3-4 weeks of like heavy modeling. So, and that's working full time. So I would say about a month.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one other question that's kind of more of a general question for anyone here is, what are some academic majors that might be attractive to companies that are hiring AI professionals?
So I think for data science in particular, obviously having a background in like probability or statistics or computer science or bioinformatics or biostatistics, things that where you're doing data analysis. I obviously didn't cover all of them. I think there's like a quantitative finance, econometrics, things of that nature. Something very quantitative, something that has math in its curriculum, and then something that has research as well. Obviously, research is a heavy component of data science.
Thank you for addressing those questions. Chelsea, thanks so much for jumping in, because we are here to get your questions answered, students.
Yeah.
our audience.
I think we had one more question, and this one was for Ryan. So a student wanted to know, this is probably a really long, answer, but just kind of an overview of how can AI help to lower costs when new technology can be really expensive to develop?
Yeah, and I think Abbas hit on it a bit, right? What we typically see is, we call them the MAGs or AWS, Microsoft, and Google, right? The big three, Alibaba being the one in Asia Pac. We tell our clients to leverage their investment, right? So across the board, all four of those are investing about an average of $2 billion a month into their cloud services, which is a lot of the image processing, right? The natural language recognition. So I would say rather than you trying to build that technology yourself, right? Figure out how you can uniquely combine what they have invested in, they spend a lot of time and investment in, and lower the cost there, right? The sort of cost to do some image processing or natural language processing using an AWS or a Google service is fairly low. And so lots of times that's how we see our clients enter into that sort of technology space around some of the AI and machine learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're caught up with questions now. So we can move on to our next panelist. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, thanks for popping in here, Chelsea, because we're here to be able to get questions answered and learn more about AI. And with that, let me go ahead and take our discussion here to Chris Wetherill. Chris, you want to go ahead and jump in and talk a little bit about what you do day in, day out with AI?
Yeah, not a problem. So in working at State Auto, we, just to give a little bit of background, are sort of in the middle of a 4-ish year journey to try and basically double in size. So going from about $1.5 billion company to a little over $3 billion at the end of next year. And with that, we have been challenged to keep our sort of employee level pretty much flat. So we don't want to have 4,000 to 5,000 employees at the end of this all, and we also want to maintain a really excellent level of customer service for all of our independent agents, our insureds, our claimants, everybody that we have to interact with. And I mean, speaking for myself, working for an insurance company, I hate interacting with insurance. It's never a fun experience. So really a couple of tall challenges for us. And I think this is absolutely not going to be possible without really some serious innovation on our part in terms of how we do business, how we approach all of our internal processes, how we manage our claims volume, our customer interactions, everything that spans that entire gamut. And as part of that, we're really looking to AI and to machine learning to help assist in that. And really, when we talk about AI internally, it's a matter of not how do the machines take over your job, not how do we build out Skynet or whatever else. It's a question of how do we take these really boring, mundane tasks that you're doing day in, day out, and how do we automate them for you? How do we free you up to do the more important, more engaging aspects of your job? And as part of that, it's also how do we provide you sort of accurate, real-time, actionable information when you actually need it? And how do we be a little bit more proactive in that respect? And this, in terms of what we solution, can be anything from just a very simple sort of rules engine where you have a known input, you get a known output, it's very deterministic, no real math or statistics or machine learning involved. That arguably still is AI if it's automating, incorporating human decisioning into some repeatable, automatable process. Or it could go all the way into the newest, fanciest neural network architecture that you just read in the white paper from Google or something. It really, we try to approach on a case-by-case basis to figure out what actually makes the most sense for this use case. I know Abbas mentioned a Gartner report that said 87–90%, however many of companies say, yeah, we really want AI. But a couple years ago, a different Gartner report was like, hey, about 80–85% of big data and data science projects, they're going to fail. And part of that's because even though everyone's saying they want AI, nobody really has a good, consistent understanding of, well, okay, what problems can AI actually solve for us in the context of our business? And for us, that's big risk. That's something we have to mitigate, right? So we have to be really careful and deliberate in terms of how we approach and take on these projects. And sort of the frame that we've adopted is we try to work on about a 8 to 10 week cycle on any of these projects just to prove out the concept, to see, do we have enough data? Do we have the right data? And does it look like there's going to be sort of enough here for us to actually get a good enough prediction at the end of the day? Never going for perfect, just is it better or as good as what we have in our current business process? And if it looks like that's going to be the case, awesome, we can go forward with it, take it into production. If not, well, it's a relatively small time investment, and we hopefully learn something from it, and we can do a little bit better job in what data we collect and how we collect them going forward. So just to real quickly, because I really looking forward to the open discussion later, don't want to take up too much more time, just give a couple use cases in terms of projects that we've successfully deployed so far. One of the big ones near and dear to my heart has been when somebody calls into their independent agent or calls into our call center, are we able to proactively figure out, why is this person calling in to begin with? Because if you're calling in, we've already failed you somehow. So we need to make that interaction, that experience as positive and as painless for you as we can. And so if your agent picks up the phone or you reach our call center and we're able to say, hey, Chris, I noticed you're probably calling because your credit card expired. Would you like me to update that for you? All of a sudden, that's a much more personalized and sort of streamlined interaction that doesn't get into the sort of creepy, hey, I noticed that you looked at this page on Facebook, so why don't you buy a homeowner's policy with us because you're looking at Zillow ads or whatever. So really trying to find a balance there between what is going to make the best customer experience without sort of overreaching into that's a little too personal, that's a little too weird, how did you know that about me? We've also looked at sort of on the claim side, can we sort of streamline that experience for you? So if we let you snap a couple of photos of your car after you got into an accident, can we figure out, well, we think because you hit the front bumper, you just lightly tapped someone, not a lot of damage, probably about a $400 claim, whatever, we'll just pay that to you immediately. You never have to talk to a human, don't have to go through any long claims process, you have the money in your account that day. And from our side, that also really helps us manage that incoming claims volume as we continue to write more business, as we continue to see sort of usage increase. And then maybe one other sort of on the risk mitigation side, so how can we prevent you from actually having an accident in the first place? We do a lot in the commercial insurance side, and so we're really looking at sort of telematics and sort of the Internet of Things. Term might have heard come up, but if we have maybe restaurants install sensors for temperature or moisture in their freezers, in the food storage areas, can we say, hey, someone forgot to close the freezer door when they were shutting down for the night. You should probably go check on it, or else all your ice cream is going to spoil, and you'll have a $25,000 claim. That was an actual case that we were able to reach out and be like, hey, you should check on this, and we were able to successfully prevent a loss from happening. And so really, it's for us a question of how can we foster these more positive interactions, because typically with insurance, you'll have experienced some sort of traumatic event recently. So if we can prevent it from happening or make it a better experience for you, a more human experience, then that's a win all around.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point about that sometimes people only think that AI is taking jobs when it really helps free up humans to be able to do other work that incorporates their strengths. And also with working with insurance, I imagine that there's only so much that AI can do as far as what comes into play is having that human element, that someone to talk to kind of reassure them that things are going to get worked out. Those soft skills that are so important that keep people employed that AI can't do. So I imagine that's a big part of maintaining that good customer service and helping your clients. So do we have any questions here for Chris? I'm just kind of looking through. Okay. I know questions are coming in, and so Chris, I want to thank you so much for talking to us about what that looks like at State Auto and some of the things that you're doing and how you're making it easier for people to do their jobs by taking away some of that mundane task and making it automated. I really appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So with that, Will, I know at CapTech you're doing a lot of exciting things. Do you want to go ahead and jump in and kind of talk about, what are some of the things that you're doing?
Sure, definitely so. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah. Yep, we sure can. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So let me start off with, we share decks within CapTech for various different things, and we've got a whole analytics group and machine learning practice and so forth. And I said, hey, can you guys send me some decks so I can kind of steal some stuff from you to kind of augment my talk? And they said, sure. So they sent me a deck, and it had this cute little robot with a yellow background on it. And I said, well, that's not creepy enough for talking about AI. So I went out and found this picture here. So behold the Ethernet brain. All right, so let's make sure I can actually change slides here. There we go. Real quick, just an introduction of myself. We're going to take a little bit of a change of tactic for what everybody else has been kind of talking about. We'll talk about some of the things that we're doing here in CapTech as well, and some of the industry examples that we've seen and that we're helping with. But also want to talk about the demand for it. So what's the market demand for these types of skills? What's the talent demand for some of the types of things that you need to have in order to kind of perform some of these duties and tasks? And also some further consideration things that we can talk about that are a little bit more societal in nature. But we'll hit all those pretty hard. So about me, I lead the Columbus office, the technical lead for that. We've got a business and technical side. I'm on the technical side. Typically, I'm an AWS architect. That's where I play. That's where I like to play. Agnostic or for a lot of other things, but I really, really, really love Golang. It's not something that we mentioned here today. There's been a lot of Python love, which is fine. But if you guys want to sit down and talk about some real programming sometimes, give me a holler. We'll talk about Golang. And if that's not making Ryan laugh, then I don't know what will. So claim to fame. If you guys don't recognize that, which it was probably done before a lot of you were born, Turbo Prolog was the second product by Borland after Turbo Pascal. And I was one of the first people to run to the store and buy it back when software came on 5.25-inch floppies, and a book came with it as well. So that was kind of my introduction to AI and inference engines. And then I decided to tackle writing one. And as Ryan mentioned before, this was before AWS had recognition and a lot of the tools they have. It was expensive. It was expensive to write and build, and a lot of time went into trying to build that engine. If I were to do it today, I probably would reduce my cost by 100-fold. So first thing, let's talk about market demand. If we would have had this talk, I think originally we were going to have this in person back in April or earlier April. If we had had this talk back then, this would be a much different talk. And I didn't want to be completely tone deaf with the things that are going on, because it's going to change a lot of the things that Gartner's been talking about and a lot of things that my clients and everybody else's clients have been doing and wanting to do, because now that's all changed. And we don't know exactly how it's going to change, because until we all get back to work and we see what the landscape is going to look like, we're really not going to have a plan, an idea for what new things are going to be prioritized. So with that said, we're reevaluating everything at this point. New rules, new needs, new fears. And somebody mentioned it earlier. It's like, I don't want to talk to a bot if I'm getting wrong answers. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to talk to a person if I'm going to get COVID. So there's a flip side to all the coins that we're going to be discussing here. I love going in and checking in. I fly a lot. I love going in and checking at the airport. I've got everything memorized on the touch screen for how I get my tickets and all my boarding passes and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I want to do that anymore. I want all that stuff given to me so I can just walk straight onto the plane. I don't want to go touch some other screen that somebody else has touched. Kroger's killing me. Kroger doesn't do Apple Pay or any other kind of pay. You actually have to touch their pad in order to check out. Those are the types of things that we're going to have to talk about. Is that going to change? And is that going to force interfaces like audio interfaces to come to the forefront? Because now I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to say it. I don't want to have to touch anything, so I want to be able to speak it and have a reasonably assured expectation that I'm going to get the right answers back from that. So those are the types of things that we're talking about, how we're switching the paradigms just a little bit. And I'm sorry I used the word paradigm. I didn't mean to. One of the questions that came up is, when are businesses using AI? And one thing that doesn't happen a lot, at least in our consulting practice, is the clients don't come to us and say, hey, build us something that's got AI or machine learning with it. It's more of, hey, we got this problem we need to solve, and we haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do it. Can you help us with that? We have an army of people, or we don't have an army of people. We have an army of, or a ton of money, or we don't have a ton of money. All these constraints they may have, and sometimes the solutions just kind of become self-evident as you're working through it. It may be just a regular run-of-the-mill application that you build for them, or you'll go out and buy something off the shelf and configure it for them. Maybe a process change. But sometimes it's increasingly amount. We're getting more things where you actually have to apply some sort of repetition type learning algorithm that says, all right, I'm going to take this, I'm going to build on it. I'm going to build on it some more. I'm going to build on it some more. And eventually I'm going to have an application or a program or a process that is actually smart and it learns as it goes over time and solve some of these hard problems that can't be scripted out with a flowchart. This is the slide that we typically use for all the various different uses for various different industries and whatnot. And these needs are still here, but the ones I've added in bold are the ones that are kind of the post-COVID type things that we're looking at. So from healthcare, we've done some of the fraud and waste. And I think a question was earlier is how do these things are expensive? I mean, how do companies deal with that? And you deal with it on the cost savings. So if it costs you $1 million to build it, but you save 30, 40, 50, $60 million in order to actually run it, then it's a good deal. Not all of them are that big, but not all of them are that small either. Sometimes these things become self-evident. And yeah, I'll spend $1 million to make 100 million all day long. But some of the things we're also going to start seeing are at-risk identification, identifying those people that based upon when I have a call with my doctor now over the phone, I joked with him, he says, now you're doing house calls now. When I joke with him over the phone and say, here's the symptoms I have, to run through something that says, all right, this person may need to be screened for COVID or not, or screened for these other things. Interaction monitoring, if you haven't been watching the news, as far as using your phones to track where you go, who you interact with, and as soon as somebody says, I've tested positive for COVID, they can backtrack that person's transactions and locations through the phone and find out what other phones were there in their proximity. That's going to become a big deal. Financial need predictions. My client currently is a bank, and we're having to deal with the fallout of people that aren't going to be able to pay their mortgages and other types of bills for the next several months. So predicting what kind of needs we're going to have in those, so next time a crisis comes into play, they kind of know how big of a hit they're going to take financially with their clients. Retail, I don't know for you guys, but I don't get Jif peanut butter anymore because I can't find it. I'm now eating either Giant Eagle brand or Kroger brand. So it's just one of those things where my habits have changed. And will they continue to change once things become more plentiful? Maybe, maybe not. So it's an opportunity for retail to kind of step in and say, hey, we see that you usually use this, but now you tried this for a couple of times. You like it? We'll keep it type thing. So. And then utilities for usage monitoring. I'm surprised that Netflix has not gone down, but hopefully it's because that they've got good abilities to kind of forecast what their trends are going to be. Okay, so what CapTech is seeing. Number one area is fraud detection. See this in insurance and in banking, is determining when somebody's trying to do something that's not correct. So whether it happens to be policies or claims that are being made that aren't legitimate. There's also for gas cards that are being charged when they shouldn't be. Those types of things come into play, and figuring out what that fraud is, and they'll save a lot of money right there to the point where he pays for his project tenfold. Customer experiences in hospitality and transit, which I'll show one here to you in a second, and also support. The most ingenious one I've heard so far is a machine learning algorithm where a company that we've worked with up in Cleveland actually make kitchen appliances, and they train their staff to listen to the device so that when the device goes wrong, the motor makes certain sounds. And based upon the certain sounds that it makes, is indicative of a certain kind of problem. So what they're trying to do is come up with a way to, and Alexa doesn't let you do this currently, but come up with a way to be able to play that over the phone or through some kind of recording, send that into an AI model to say, all right, here's exactly what's wrong with this particular motor. This is up for warranty. This is not up for warranty, or whatever the case may be. But it kind of takes that person out of the equation from having to be trained to do that so they can do other things. But in all these situations, and it's mentioned before, and it's worth mentioning again, we're talking about augmenting what we do, not replacing us. And if we do replace a job, it's a matter of moving that person to another location, hopefully to perform a more valuable task to the company and hopefully to themselves as well. So as the example I gave earlier about the healthcare, one of the things we did with claims is a deal here. We're saving $30 million on that, a pretty good deal for them. The interesting one that's got COVID implications, even though we didn't think about it at the time, as a very large hotel chain that was doing something to be able to do facial recognition for people coming in to recognize those people that had status with the chain, to let them into certain club areas and restaurants and whatnot, or to just check them in, those types of things. So you can actually walk in, if you haven't done this, it actually works now. You can walk in with your app and you've got your key on your phone, you go straight to your room and you open the door and you're in, you're good to go. Before it was more of a convenience for me as the person walking in. Now it's actually maybe more of a cleanliness type thing. So it's less interaction with humans, checking in, those types of things. Then I can go straight to my room. I don't have to worry about that interaction being an issue. And the hotel can now say, all right, I need to have as many front end staff. I need to have more cleansing people that actually take care of making sure that everything is sanitized and cleaned, and rooms are a bit more clean. Those types of surfaces and whatnot that are typically more communal are now handled a little bit better. So it's more of a peace of mind for me to go in and stay at a hotel when I know that there's extra effort being given to actually control how clean the hotel is. Passenger transit, I think, was mentioned as far as the times for routes and bus schedules and so forth. One interesting one that we have is a prototype that has the client has not picked up on it yet. We'll see if this changes the way they do, is the ability to count the people in subway cars. We don't have a subway here in Columbus, but in Eastern City, as a car comes in, and it basically counts the number of people in the car, basically not necessarily doing facial recognition, but just facial identification, and tells you if you should get on that car or not, or if you want to wait for the next one because the next one may be less crowded. Now it's going to be a situation where, and this hopefully I get somebody working on this, is I got a really smart AI guy that's on the call here. We've talked about this, is if I can recognize people with masks versus without masks, then I can tell you how likely are you going to get something from the next car that comes through based upon the percentage of people that are wearing masks and so forth. Kind of a stupid human trick, but nevertheless, it may have some value for certain people. All right, so talent demand. What's required of you if you want to get into this realm? Some of these things are new, some of these are not going to be new. And one of these is just basically a personality trait that you want to have anyway, especially if you're going to be a consultant. According to Gartner, and with a little bit of observation on our own, the top 3 challenges for AI adoption are the skills of the staff, is by far number 1. Understanding the benefits and uses, where they're actually going to get value out of it, is number 2. Data scope and quality, in which, if you guys have never worked in a large company, a lot of times the data scope and quality is a horrible, horrible place to be. But the number 4 is government regulation. And as an example, we've got a project that had the first 3 of these nailed. We had the skills of the staff, we were able to do it. We had an understanding of the benefits and uses. We had good data, or we were making good data and so forth. But then all of a sudden, we come across a government regulation that says facial recognition is not allowed in this state. So now I've got an application that meets the needs of the client, meets the needs of the customers, meets the needs of everybody involved, but we can't do it we can't do it in this way because of government regulation. So that's going to be another thing that you see states as they start to pass no facial recognition laws and so forth. There's some unintended consequences with that. I mean, there's illegitimate uses, obviously, but there's also legitimate uses where that's been kind of, especially in a COVID world, where you don't want to touch things, that you want to be able to get through things without having to deal with the germs as much as possible. The first one is a data scientist, and you guys have mentioned it a couple of times, but previous speakers have. And my team in Atlanta said, look, when you do this slide, make sure one thing, that they understand what an ML engineer is. And I'll give you a perfectly good example of this. I've got a statistical modeler on one side, data engineer on the other side, and somehow that makes a data scientist. Well, my client in New York is currently doing a fraud detection for gas station purchases. And they built this great model. They used 75 million transactions of credit cards at gas stations to kind of train it, and it was great. They were actually nailing it. They trained it with looked at past calls where people actually called in and said, my credit card got stolen, so that's not a charge I need to have. And it kind of marked it as a positive. So they got rid of a good portion of their false hits and positives and negatives and so forth. And they said, hey, this is great. We can do this. Let's roll this out. And they said, great. We just need a batch file because every night we're going to process it. It's like, wait, a batch file? How is that going to help us? Because I want to be able to go to the gas station and be able to have my card declined right then and there if it's determined to be a fraudulent type of transaction. I said, well, we don't know how to do that. We built the model. We don't know how to actually put it in the cloud. So that's where both sides come into play, is understanding the statistic modeling side, the data engineering side, and being able to put them together. As a cloud developer, what I've found in building cloud applications is that 10 to 20% of the time is actually spent with cloud. The rest of it's just regular development. So computer science is definitely one of the, if it's not the major, it's definitely a minor that you're going to need to have, is understanding how to build these applications and make them build to scale, because you're going to need real-time decision making a lot of times once you get these models in play.
So I do have a quick question in here that's I'm noticing from students, and I'm going to open this up to everyone on the panel. So what is the difference between AI and ML, machine learning?
Machine learning, and this is to me, and I've got a back pocket slide. And it looks like I'm way over on time as well. But I need to, machine learning to me is the actually the building of the model. The AI is the execution of it. I know some of my guys may differ with that definition, but machine learning to me is a subset of AI. It's all encompassing of that. If we want to get into that later in the panel, we can actually show the slide that's got that on it. But I need to blow through these. If you don't mind, I can get these things done. We can probably answer that up.
Sure.
Cool. All right. So quickly, change management is also necessary to have, and then your personal skill that you need to have is the ability to pivot. A couple things for further consideration. The availability of models and whatnot. There's a finite number of models out there that we can all use. Unless you're going to build your own, it's not very cost effective. You're probably going to use somebody else's, as I believe Ryan mentioned before. Availability of data is going to govern whether or not you're able to have something that's on your own walled garden or something that's very large, much larger than that. And then also the ability to utilize models, models as a service going forward. Real quick on the ethics, the flip side of the coins I mentioned a little bit earlier. Governments went through, academic institutions went through, and software developers went through and said, these are the 5 things that AIs need to have. Be human-centric, socially beneficial, fair, explainable and transparent, secure and safe and accountable. On the surface, these sound like great ideas that you want to have, but there's also flip sides to all those. If you're fair, you're also not very diverse. If you're human-centric, how do you scale it? If you want to be socially beneficial, who's going to decide that? Those are the types of answers that we have to, questions we have to answer when we go forward from this. So it's great that you want to do AI, but just make sure it doesn't impact people adversely. And lastly, I apologize for running long. It's summertime. These are the things that if you're looking forward to reading things, pursuant to my last point, Weapons of Math Destruction is an outstanding book on machine learning that the algorithms are great. Insurance underwriting, crime prevention, and those types of things are great. But there's unintended consequences with all of them that you don't necessarily know when you're building that model. The inevitable AI for all the things, everything's going to be AI in very much a little way, as opposed to having HAL or Skynet, as was mentioned earlier. Everything's going to be vacuum cleaners and Roombas and those types of things are going to be the things that have the AI on them. The master algorithm is kind of the one algorithm to rule them all. And it doesn't really matter anyway because we're all in a simulation. The simulation hypothesis is outstanding for determining that the biggest crowning achievement of AI is for an AI to create another AI. So just a couple of things real quick with that. I apologize for running long. So hopefully it was informative. And any questions you have, I've got back pocket materials for it. And any kind of time you guys want to have after this, I'll stick around as long as you want.
William, thank you so much. I mean, you added so much to the conversation about looking at, here you have at least summer reading for students to be able to explore, to learn more about AI. You also talked about how in transit that AI can be used to count how many people are on a train. So there's just a lot of neat, different examples that I think you guys are bringing forward for our students to consider when thinking about AI and how we're using it during our day. With that being said, Chelsea, do we have any other questions? And I guess I'll take this time.
Hi, we do. Yes, sorry, it just takes me a second to turn on my video. So we do have a couple questions. How is AI currently being used in the educational sphere as opposed to business? It says virtual learning can give hands-on repetition and experience to students before they actually get out into the world in their careers. let's see. And she was just kind of making the point of that can also help our students train and be more accurate, especially in situations like the healthcare field where that accuracy is really, really important. So does anyone have any thoughts on, are there any differences that you're seeing in how AI is being used in education as opposed to business?
And I'll encourage our faculty to join in too.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So I know of one company. I know of a company that is doing retention models for education, so they could discover high risk students that may be susceptible to dropping out. So there's a bunch of data available, historical data from a bunch of different institutions, and they've been collecting for a while. So they've been able to build models that will allow advisors to proactively address students that may be high risk.
Thank you, Abbas, for sharing that, because that is something certainly in the education, being in education ourselves, that we're really concerned about, and we want to help students be successful.
Absolutely.
Chelsea, did you have another part of that question, or?
No, that was it for the question. I don't know if anybody else had any input there.
I had a quick comment. So in our cybersecurity classes, as we're moving into the cloud, and while this isn't maybe strictly AI, but from an automation perspective, it becomes pretty apparent when you're talking about managing, 1,000 web servers or whatever that might look like from a interaction perspective. If a human has to interact with those versus having some kind of automation and intelligence that can interact with those in an intelligent way, you program it once and let it do it 1,000 times versus touching 1,000 different items. And so I think that really helps kind of get the wheels turning. Even though it's only automation, it is, it's a way that that artificial intelligence can help us. And a lot of times I liken, Jarvis, for any of the Marvel fans out there, Tony Stark and Jarvis and Iron Man, Tony gave Jarvis these things to do all the time, and he went off and did them. So that's kind of the way I think of AI is more of a helping hand, which some of the other presenters have already mentioned.
Absolutely. And so I think that's it for the questions. I know we want to keep on track for time, for at least for right now, but everyone is saying that they're all headed to the library to get all of those books that William recommended. So our summers are booked already. So
Wonderful. So I know, thank you, Mike, for sharing that that insight, and for everyone here today. So Kristen Gillenwater, I know that your company is considering looking at AI. So I'd like to invite you to kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad that you actually put me last, because I think that everybody on the panel has done a great job presenting information to create this beautiful picture of AI. And I just want to spin us in one more direction. So I was a computer scientist at Battelle, and I actually chose to leave Battelle and move my career into a different direction. And so I actually am representing a nonprofit. And if you've never heard of TechCore, we've actually been around for 25 years, and we're a nonprofit specifically in the technology education space. And so let me just show you. Can everybody see my screen?
Not just yet. Yeah.
Try one more time.
Now we've got it.
Fantastic. Too many things are hovering over my, there we go. Okay. So I just want to share a little bit about TechCore. So like I said, we've been around for 25 years. We design and implement programs from everywhere from elementary to high school students. And so I kind of had to laugh when Chris was talking about boring automations, but that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to educate from the elementary level through high school. And one of the programs that we do that is called Techie Camp. And like Julie mentioned, we're not using a ton of AI in our programs, but through our grants from Battelle, we actually have been able to take some of the curriculum for Techie Camp to include some AI components. And so we do a lot with human-computer interaction, as well with robotics, where robotics is where we're going to include that AI. So if you look there, the Lego EV3, most of the AI that we do is going to be basic functions. And so, you know, we had Ryan and Abbas and Chris and Will, and they're talking about these really complex concepts. So how do you break that down to an elementary level? Well, we use things like a Lego EV3 or that MakeBot, MBot there, because they're going to take sensors and buttons and ultrasonic and gyro and color for the Lego EV3. And then if you've never used an MBot, the light, the line following, the ultrasonic, those are going to be able to combine to create robots that move or perform actions autonomously. And so what we're trying to do is create these really rich computer science experience for students that likely have never been exposed to computer science. And so we might call it computer science, but we want them to get involved in robotics, and we want them to be excited and have these hands-on experiences that really helps them understand what that concept is and to excite them about computer science learning. Another topic that we offer in Techie Camp is called app development. And so in this camp, obviously they're developing an app on a phone. And so using that phone, we use the accelerometer, the camera, and other features of the phones to provide feedback to the programs. But it's really just basic interactions. And so I guess one of the things working for a nonprofit is that as a student, I would hope that as you're pursuing and thinking about occupations and industries, know that you can utilize your knowledge of AI in a classroom setting that can still be rigorous and relevant and fun. So we want to look outside your primary profession to be able to give back to the classroom. Will did a fantastic job of explaining market demand, and yes, those jobs are going to be available. Yes, those markets are adopting AI, but we need people to do that work. And so, yes, that's you as a student, but also that's giving back to that next generation. And so our goal with involving professionals in our programs, it's to ensure that our students are learning relevant data skills. So some of those use examples that Ryan shared, being able to share that information and those real world examples is really how students can make connections. So I'm not going to go into the whole, market demand, because Will did a great job of that. But I think as a student, you can understand that AI is no longer just in IT or in the tech industry. We're seeing it in everything, right? So we've got medical, business, law, manufacturing, and really to Abbas's point that, companies are needing AI and they want to put the money behind it. Bloomberg, a software company, actually shared that in 2014, now granted this was, 6 years ago, but in 2014, there were more than $300 million that was invested in startups, and that was a 300% increase. So imagine what that is today. And so really with the implementation of our programs, especially at that elementary level, is extremely important. So we need students to understand from their entire educational experience that they can have these rich opportunities to make connections between the technology that they love to use, but understand that they can actually become a creator of technology. And so what we're trying to do is ignite that passion so that they have a story about themselves that says, I can do hard things. I'm cut out. I want to be able to do this. I want to be a leader in this industry. And I guess as one of the only female panelists, I want to see more women in this industry. I want to see people of color. I want to see minorities. I want to see people that aren't traditionally represented in this environment and in this space. And so for us doing these programs, that's really a passion of ours, and a part of our mission is to really reach out to those groups that aren't normally represented. So just planting that seed that as you become a professional in your career, to remember to give back and share that information with others and with that next generation.
Yeah, Kristen, I think you bring up a real important point, is how do we bring more professionals, diversity into not only IT, but then also working with artificial intelligence. And I noticed that you were also talking and showing pictures of different games and different things that really inspired a lot of our students to get into technology, or to learn more, to excite them about learning more about artificial intelligence, and even being here today. So with that being said, I'd like to open up the floor to all of our faculty panel, or all of our panelists, including our faculty members, to kind of talk about, what would be your recommendations? I'm hearing a lot of students that are interested in getting into AI. What would be your recommendations for students in exploring different careers, and what that might look like?
I can start with that. I'm Jeremy Banta. I'm the program coordinator for the supply chain management program at Columbus State. Supply chain until about 6 months ago was a industry most people had heard of but didn't know anything about, and now you hear about it every single day, multiple times on the news. My recommendation would be you don't necessarily have to go into a career that's heavily into AI. If you're interested in an industry and in AI, it's good to understand the industry and be able to bring that knowledge with you. There are very few logisticians that understand AI and programming and computers. And if you can go into supply chain or into business and bring that additional education with you, be it a certificate or a second major or an associate's degree, you're going to be head and shoulders above all your competition, and you're going to be able to bring new ideas into a business that doesn't really know anything about that particular area.
Well said. Well said. What about you, Mike or Patricia?
Yeah, I'll echo what Jeremy said. So I get a lot of students that just want to be in cybersecurity, and which is great, but there needs to be a background there as well. You need to have some kind of networking background or database or operating system, and then you integrate security with that. And that's kind of the way that I see AI is, to Jeremy's point, not just to be an AI expert, but have a background that you can apply the AI to. And I think that's where the real value is.
I noticed that Abbas just mentioned something in the chat about importance of getting involved in local networking and professional opportunities. So I'd like to, at this time, invite our employer panelists to kind of comment on how can students get to where you are? What would be your recommendation for them in wanting to get into an occupation such as what you're working in with AI?
I can tell you from a consultant standpoint that I'm going to speak over the top of any other industry right now because I know that they have specific things going on. But the projects I get are random from month to month, from engagement to engagement. And I just put in the chat window over here, some of it is happenstance. One of the projects we have out of the Columbus office started off as a project going in one direction. And in the middle of it, they changed the requirements they needed to have. They had an idea. We showed them a prototype, and all of a sudden they said, we're changing directions into the AI ML direction. And the people on that team just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Consequently, I had people that come out of school with data degrees, and sometimes they end up doing a lot of programming before they get to that first data warehouse / machine learning type opportunity. It's luck of the draw sometimes.
And you talked about happenstance. So before I get to that, though, I do want to mention that I know that I met with you during the Makers X. I over at, like the big Makers X convention, and we talked. And you actually have students that are, or people that are working for you that were previous Columbus State students.
Right.
So, I just want to call out that, I thought that was fantastic and I enjoyed talking to them. But the happenstance really, I mean, looking at today's timing with everything that's going on, it is kind of a happenstance as to where things are being utilized that might not have been used before, and using AI to be able to deal with COVID-19 and all that's happening.
Right, and you also have to realize, and it was mentioned by, I think, several of the panelists already before, is that AI and ML right now is a very, very small percentage of the projects that are out there. That will continue to grow. As that continues to grow and becomes more of a degree choice where people have a demonstrable experience in it, then it'll become easier to get into those types of fields. For right now, it's paying dues, learning how to do cloud development and everything else to kind of get you there, and hopefully you get into it as become more popular.
So Chris, I want to bring you back into this conversation because I know that you're really talking about how you use AI to help enhance that customer experience. But speaking as a company, I know you're one of our collaborative partners here at Columbus State. And what do you look for in students when you're looking to hire people on? What kind of skills are you looking for? So, I know that we talked about having technology skills is really important, but what about what are some of the other skills that you see are important when you hire new people on to State Auto?
Yeah, no, really good question. I think, just speaking for our own team, one of the things that we really look for is sort of a natural intellectual curiosity and sort of demonstrable critical thinking skills, right? Some of the absolute best data scientists that I've hired have come from a liberal arts background where, I mean, like myself, for instance, my background's in Latin, classical languages, and I'm in data science at an auto insurance company. So I think it's less necessarily about the specific major that you choose in your undergraduate or graduate experience. I mean, obviously, you need some exposure to math and statistics and probability theory. You need some exposure to programming. You need to understand cloud technologies, all that good stuff. But if you aren't able to articulate these mathematical concepts to a business audience who really doesn't really necessarily care what an F1 score is, they just want to know, is this going to make me money or not? If you can't have that translation in terms of the conversation with your partner, with your business partners, and if you're not actively going out and looking for new problem statements and trying to figure out, well, we might have always done this process X way, but is there any actual reason for us to continue doing it that way, or is it an opportunity for automation, or where AI or ML could come into play? Really, those skills are, in my experience, what's differentiated really good candidates and data scientists from sort of everybody else.
Yeah, and hey, Ryan, I guess one thing I'll add on to that, and I think you hit on it quite a bit, is, if you're a senior and you're graduating in a year, don't think you're done learning, right? You mentioned, right, that intellectual curiosity. I would say it a little bit different is I want lifelong learners, right? If we go back and look at the history of kind of technology and where we came from and where we're heading, right? We had mainframes in the 60s and 70s, kind of came to popularity right there around to the 80s and 90s. So, 20 or 30 years of the same technology, right? And then you have kind of the rise of Java and the custom languages that came along, right? And those were around for 10 or 20 years. And now suddenly cloud is here, and AI and machine learning, and the pace at which we're requiring people, and the technology sort of changes that happen are getting faster and faster. So Chris's point, I am less concerned about, do you know AI today? Because the AI today is not going to be the AI in 8 months, 9 months, 12 months from now. It's really about how adaptable are you, and are you constantly sort of seeking out and learning and growing.
Thanks for that addition there, Ryan, and thanks for your partnership as well with Columbus State, because I think that it's so important that employers and education institutions work together to help prepare students. And I thank you guys for being here. Abbas, I wanted to go ahead and call you up just one more time because I found out about, well, actually we got connected with your organization prior, but I had the opportunity to attend one of your artificial intelligence kind of communications and meetups that you have. I didn't know if you wanted to speak a little bit about that here before we end, because our time is coming to a close here, and just wanted to give you a moment to speak about that.
So is your question about community meetups, or it's about Columbus Collaboratory and hosting talks?
You know, I know it's about, I think, your meetups that you have, how you hosted that, and how students might be able to get involved.
Sure. So I actually I personally don't host a meetup, but my actually my fiance, she hosts Our Ladies Columbus, and Our Ladies Columbus is a organization, like, you know, grassroots organization to empower women and you know, LGBTQ and you know, diverse people. So yeah, they meet, I think, on the third Thursday of the month, and you can look them up on meetup.com. And basically, they, you know, they do a lot of introductory level stuff for the R programming language, and you can, you know, get involved with that kind of stuff. They're very welcoming, and, you know, it's not a very competitive kind of environment. So if you want to get involved with R, if you want to get involved with like some of the data science stuff, I think it's a place to go. It is open to men and women. It's just Our Ladies Columbus because women are the speakers. So women will always be the speakers, and yeah, so it's good. And also, I think Chris hosts a meetup as well. It's the Columbus Data Science Group. I don't know. I think it's something like that. You can go ahead and talk about that, Chris.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so State Auto helps to host a monthly data science meetup at our headquarters usually. Obviously, some delays given the ongoing global pandemic, but hopefully later in the year we will be able to resume those. Typically once a month, we feature folks from various industries across Columbus, from academia, consulting, and elsewhere, really just talking about how they apply data science in their specific industry or sector or job, and varying degrees of technical detail, from sort of this is how I got started in data science, this is how I made the career transition, to let's actually build a TensorFlow neural network together. So we very much encourage everyone to check that out if you're interested. That's on meetup.com as well. Just Columbus Data Science is what it's called. The other thing I do want to plug real quick is State Auto does have an apprenticeship program with Columbus State. So if you haven't heard of that, but if you're interested, please check it out. Julian, you're nodding your head, so I'm hoping you have more resources on the Columbus State side than I do. But we've had some great folks come through. We've converted a few of them to full-time employees after they've graduated. It's a great opportunity, great experience. But we encourage everyone to check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those different meetups and opportunities for students to get involved. And yes, Chris, our students do enjoy the IT apprenticeship opportunities, along with Ryan. You might be aware also of the IT apprenticeship opportunities that we work with you through Accenture in partnership with to provide that for students. So I want to take a moment to thank all of you guys for being here today. You really have enriched our students' experience, given them more information about AI, but really helped them be able to understand a little bit more than what they knew before today's event. So I want to personally thank all of you guys, and somehow, I'm not sure how I'm going to make this happen, but I'm going to get Cheryl's cookies to all of you guys because they're right around where I live. And I know that, we just really want to thank you for all that you've done. So thank you all for being here today, and stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully the sun will be out here soon and you can enjoy.
Thanks,
you.
Julie.
Thank
Great,
you.
thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks to you, Julie. Thanks to you
Yes.
for hosting.
And let me just say thank you to everyone behind the scenes. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot. We have so many people working behind the scenes to make all this happen, to follow the chat, to get to student questions, to be able to make sure that this is going and running smoothly. So thank you to everyone.
Thanks to you, Julie, for hosting such a wonderful event for us and for preparing all of this. We really appreciate all of your hard work. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes, please do.
Good job, Julie.
Thank you. Good job to you guys too.